So with that, I'm going to introduce the panel and introduce myself. I'm Karen Fink. I am the Long Range Planning Director at the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. And we have Jessica Wackenhut, who is the Housing Manager at the City of South Lake Tahoe. And Jim Marino is the Executive Director of the Tahoe Transportation District. And Jerry Bendel is the General Manager and Area Managing Director of Forest Suites Resort. And he's also a board member of the South Shore Transportation Management Agency. So they all have been working together actually on a lot of projects and elements of funding, which you're going to hear about. And with that, I will turn it over to Jessica to start.
Great, thanks Karen.
Yeah.
Good afternoon everyone. At the City of South Lake Tahoe, we focus across the housing spectrum. So that's ranging from unsheltered homelessness all the way to thinking about market rate and affordable multifamily housing, all the way to home ownership. So we're constantly thinking about what does the need look like across those different income levels and where are we filling in those gaps. So the one thing I want to talk a little bit about is workforce housing. So every community defines workforce housing a little bit differently, and it's heavily linked to the main economic driver in that community. So as you heard this morning, the main economic driver in our community is tourism. So thinking about what do those jobs look like in our community and how is that matching to those housing needs that we're addressing within the city or the greater region. So as Karen mentioned, there's 3 opportunities, but I often focus and our team looks at the 3 Ps, which are production, preservation, and protection. So the production is about how many units are we developing, so that could be new construction. Preservation is looking at our existing housing stock and how are we rehabilitating those units that we have. And protection is thinking about tenants. Are we able to prevent evictions from happening so that people have to move out and maybe have to move to the Carson Valley or another area? In the City of South Lake Tahoe, we have developed close to 700 units of affordable housing, so those are deed restricted to the income levels. And we've also worked hard for our first real preservation project and rehabilitation of 72 units, and those are for formerly homeless individuals as well. We inspect every multifamily dwelling unit in the city that's 6 units or more, or any motel that's referred to as a SRO, over 30-day stays within the city. And we do those on an annual basis, and we certify those properties to ensure that there's no substandard housing issues and they're compliant as well with the fire code. As many of you are aware, in Tahoe we have an older housing stock, so the majority of our housing stock was constructed prior to 1979. And so when we do update any of our properties, if you own a home or a property and you open up a wall, you can see that there's a lot of layers underneath that wall. And so thinking about how do we bring that up to the current 2025 building code in the state of California can be really, really difficult in a complex situation that requires a lot of people. We have a rental assistance program, or RAP, that assists residents with a 0% security deposit loan, because we know a lot of people are not able to save money when they're just trying to pay their rent or pay for food or health care. And so that helps people to just move into more stable housing instead of going into some of these SRO units that tend to be about 200 square feet. So it's very small living quarters. We operate the long-term rental incentive program. And so the city actually, we worked with Placemate in the past for the Lease to Locals program. The city staff did take it over. And so we operate that program in-house if you're familiar with that. In 2025, we had 22 people housed through the program, and 149 people have been housed since the implementation in December of 2021. Some of our well-known projects include Sugar Pine Village, which will total 248 affordable income units. And this will be the largest affordable housing project in the Tahoe Basin. So one thing I like to point out about affordable housing, because a lot of people like to ask about what is the cost of that, is the city council approved a local contribution of $2.4 million, and that in turn leveraged about $100 million from state, federal, and other sources. Tying into the transportation conversation is that we were co-applicants with the development team and were awarded $17 million for Sugar Pine Village. Phase 2B from the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities State grant program. And this is the first time a project has been awarded with the ASIC funds from the state and the Tahoe region. And so $10 million of that goes into the construction of the affordable housing project, and another $7 million goes into transportation infrastructure. And so that's looking at bike lanes, and it has to be within 2 miles of the project. And we're actually just applied for another grant opportunity in partnership with TTD, and that's for our newest project we're working on, which is the 3900 Lake Tahoe Boulevard Affordable Housing Project. And that will be 75 units of affordable housing, 72 will be deed restricted. As far as regulatory tools and local innovation, I think a big theme from this morning was talking about trade-offs. Housing is often in that conversation, especially in the Tahoe Basin. So we're constantly looking at how are we meeting the need in our community from what we're hearing through a lot of engagement, but also trying to ensure that we're in line with some of Tahoe's larger regional goals. We're really excited that in 2024 we were provided with the pro-housing designation from the state of California. So that really shows that the city is going above and beyond through regulations, streamlining to support any type of housing going within the city. There's not, I think it's close to 25 cities, there's like 225 in the state of California. So there's about 30 cities and counties that are on this list, and the city is one of those. Let's see. And the last thing I'll mention is that many of you are familiar with TRPA and the growth management system. So something that we like to talk about is how the city has been pretty innovative within that system to think about how we're incentivizing multifamily housing, ADUs, and any other housing types that we want to see. And so the city provides free residential units of use when developers come to us and want to develop multifamily housing, ADUs, and some other building types. And I'll leave it at that, and I'll turn it over to you, Jim.
Thank you. That was great, Jessica. I appreciate it. For everybody, again, Jim Marino. I'm the Executive Director with the Tahoe Transportation District. I want to just give you, before we get into nitty-gritty of conversation, just what we do and what we're tasked with in the basin. So we were created in 1980 as a bi-state agency. We provide public transportation and transportation-related projects across both states, California and Nevada. It gives us a unique opportunity to leverage funds, leverage California funds in the state of Nevada and vice versa. It's pretty unique to a government agency. We operate public transit on the south and east shores of Lake Tahoe. Placer County and Truckee operate transit on the north shore of Lake Tahoe. We operate a regional transit system here on the South Shore, primarily the city of South Lake Tahoe, but we also extend down into the Carson Valley and over into Carson City. Hopefully, in the very near future, we will come up from Carson City over Highway 50, Spooner Summit. We're currently constructing a mobility hub up there. So we will have more regional connection at some point in the future, which will help for commuting in and out of the basin immensely. We also operate a couple seasonal services that could really, if you use them correctly, connect you with North Shore and South Shore. Emerald Bay pilot project is scheduled to start again this summer. Even though that's not a direct route to North Shore, it can be utilized as such. And then we operate the East Shore Express on State Route 28 in Nevada, which if you utilize it correctly, you could go in the morning all the way from South Shore to Incline Village and then come back at the evening when that service returns to South Shore. We work with a multitude of operators in the basin to try and streamline connections, try and make it easier and more accessible for folks to use public transit, whether it's for commuting, business, or tourism. We work with El Dorado Transit, who has the Sacramento to South Lake Tahoe line once a day. We work with the airporter from Reno, of course, and we utilize our facilities, the State Line Transit Center and the South Y Transit Center, as those connection points. And for purposes of us expanding and making transit more accessible, it's really on and around those key hubs, right? That's where we want to concentrate our work. As Jessica mentioned, we have a great partnership with the city. We just went through a process for grant application for affordable housing that will supplement some transit in the future. We hope that comes through. We also partner with South Shore Transit Management Association and Lake Link, which is a microtransit program on the South Shore. We have a funding agreement that utilizes funds from Douglas County and the city to run that program. We are expanding and improving our system constantly. We're trying to anyway. We're fund restricted, of course, but we're trying to. We just recently introduced an evening service, which is great for the workforce. That did not exist. And so now, Thursday through Saturday night, we have an evening service on our main routes on Highway 50. It goes up to about midnight, which is awesome. And we are integrating technology, transit apps, rideshare apps, all that good stuff. I want to mention probably one of the biggest components to accessibility for public transit, and that is our system is free. It's free to the user, absolutely zero cost. That is due large in part to subsidies by TRPA and the federal government. And I think that relieves a barrier, a big time barrier, okay? Not that our fare box or our fare strategy would cost a lot to begin with, but it does allow usage like whenever you want, right? You don't have to think about it. And for us, that's a very important strategy for public transit, and we'd like to maintain that free strategy for years if we can. I want to kind of talk a little bit about capital and infrastructure investments that we're trying to take on that could assist and help with housing and commuting and access to public transit. Again, I mentioned the technology component. We are outfitting all of our stops and our hubs with technology for applications on your phone, QR codes for updated schedules, realistic, real-time information of bus locations, so if it happened to be running late, you'll know, okay? That's one of our big upgrades we're doing right now. We also are doing a data collection strategy in the Tahoe Basin as a whole. It's known as SMART technology. And we received a grant from U.S. Department of Transportation a couple years ago, and what we're doing is we're implementing camera-based data collection systems at key areas around the basins. All the ingress and egress points, major intersections, parking lots, trailheads, and whatnot. We're in the planning element of this right now. We're not actually in the construction element of this right now. But the end goal is to get real-time information of what's happening in the community based on Highway 50, based on State Route 28, at a particular trailhead, intersection problems, relay that information back to shareholders, base your transit system off of that, base your schedule off of these real-time incidents that are happening out there. This is a big project. We're applying for about $10 million of federal funding here shortly. But we have been successful. I'll give you an example, just a safety example from this project. And there's a roundabout out in the county of El Dorado at Myers. Had our system up for 60 days, give or take, and discovered about 143 wrong-way drivers in the roundabout. Okay, brought that information to Caltrans, brought that information to CHP, and within 60 days, the roundabout was restriped, signage was changed, and the safety issue dropped off to almost nil. So if we can use that technology to advance transit, or look at congestion issues, or look at timing issues of traffic signals on the main corridor, we can make the transit system much more effective. So how does TTD really kind of align our transportation system with affordable housing? Well, we work with our partners first and foremost. We concentrate our infrastructure improvements around our major hubs, right, that are easily accessible by these developments and the core communities. I will stress that at least in South Lake Tahoe, you don't have gridded communities like you see in most urban environments, right? Where you have parallel streets, one way this way, one way that way, or whatnot. It is very hard for a transit company, whether it's microtransit or fixed route transit, to navigate in and through neighborhoods and keep a schedule going. So we're at a disadvantage of that. So we look at trying to figure out how we can create improvements near our core centers. Those improvements could be anything from better bus stops and lighting, to more sidewalks and safer pathways, to increased wayfinding signage, to better snow removal tactics, right? Because winter is a big issue for transit here. So we concentrate on those core areas and work our way out. We're not going to get into every neighborhood and fix every neighborhood, but it is a barrier to accessibility. If you have to, we did a survey not too long ago, and most people said they walk a maximum of 2 blocks to get to a bus stop, and that's all they would walk. Anything beyond that, you'd probably take a different mode of transportation. So we have to look at ways of how we can get people to walk safely from farther away and access this transit. We're adding stops where we need to, not many, but we are. Again, I mentioned wayfinding signage. We've started a pretty robust public outreach campaign, both in social media and targeted outreach with businesses and whatnot. I mean, I think we're all suffering with fuel costs right now. And you know, our latest campaign that we have out there right now is take the bus, it's free, right? Like, save a couple dollars, we're here for you. We replaced our entire fleet. We have a brand new fleet, 26 buses, $18 million. Our rides nowadays are clean, safe, well lit, and fun for the user. I guess my point here is that I want to make sure that we as a transit agency, whether it's for housing, whether it's for the commuter, or whether it's for business or tourism, is creating an environment where the rider wants to repeat a ride. They don't want to get on a bus once and be like, I'm not doing that again, right? Or they don't want to walk 4 blocks in the snow to do it. Or they don't want to have to figure out how to go to a website and download our schedule. So that's where we're going right now, with at least with our business. With some direct, or maybe indirect, opportunities for affordable housing and transit. We own a property in Incline Village, Nevada, 6.5 acres. It's the old elementary school. We had intended on building a mobility hub in the community to support the SR 28 corridor. That project is no longer in fruition. And our board of directors has decided to work with Washoe County and Reno Housing Authority towards the transfer of that parcel at no cost for affordable housing. And we're currently in some preliminary talks with Reno Housing Authority and FTA. The property is purchased with federal dollars, and typically you're required to pay back your federal investment. There's 2 options for us. We can put it on the open market, pay back our federal investment, or we can work with a local agency to transfer the land, and the federal government would waive that investment if the project meets the criteria. So that's where our board is going. I'm hopeful that that will go through. I think it's great for the community. I also think it's great that our board of directors decided to keep it going this way, as opposed to taking the easy way out, which is just putting the property in the market, taking the money, paying back our debt, and moving on. And then we are in the preliminary phases of feasibility analysis for a new maintenance and operations facility. Our current facility is outdated, it needs a lot of repair. In that feasibility study and those conceptual alternatives that we're discussing, we are discussing putting housing in this facility. I visited High Valley Transit in Utah. They just got done doing, I think it was a $45 million facility. The second floor of that facility had workforce housing units. So they incorporated the housing with the facility for their operators. We're going to explore that idea. I can't guarantee anything, of course, but we're definitely going down that road. That's pretty much all I have. That might have been a lot, but I'll turn it over to Jerry right now.
I'll be the shortest. By the way, I represent the business community. I represent the South Shore lodging community, as well as Jim alluded to, I'm the treasurer of the South Shore Transportation Management Association, which is a public-private partnership. We are the facilitator of Lake Link, which started a few years ago. The catalyst was this building itself, and it's grown since then to a really successful but challenged operation at the same time. Our business community is the beneficiary of these two. Both Jessica and Jim are amazing at what they do, and you can see it today. Their knowledge, their all-in attitude, and their willingness to look for solutions, not put hurdles up, is wonderfully, I wouldn't say refreshing, but you know, we've all in the past had maybe some others in our lives who put up challenges, and these both these try and find solutions. So obviously our challenge in the lodging industry is housing and then transportation to get our employees to work. We are in a seasonal environment, so in the wintertime, we need more employees. In the summertime, we need employees. In the wintertime, we have more people who are not employees wanting housing in South Lake Tahoe, hotel stays for skiing, etc., and obviously houses too, VRBOs, things like that. Same thing in the summer, so you see the challenges that are presented to us. A number of years ago, some of the operators, the larger operators, started to lean in on employee housing and trying to facilitate that themselves. Well, lately, in the last 3 or 4 years or sooner, we've had some liability challenges associated with that. State of California, rightly so, has really leaned in on requirements, permitting, inspections, all the things that in a corporate environment create liability and make attorneys, for those organizations, hair stand up on the back of their heads, back of their necks. So some of our employers are going away from that, and it's refreshing to know that Jessica and her team are out inspecting those units that we will refer our employees to if they get to stay in the South Shore zone. Additionally, through the SSTMA, we are leaning in on Commute Tahoe, which is an incredibly impressive program that started this past year. Through, again, a public-private partnership with some state of Nevada funds, as well as Caesars Entertainment and a couple of other larger organizations. We have now 19 Commute Tahoe Enterprise is the business partner of ours, Commute Tahoe vans. They're ranging from 8 to 15 passenger vans. I have some stats for you real quickly. They go every day. Obviously, there are 19 daily runs. Monthly passenger miles used for these are 132,000 miles. Total trips eliminated annually, 29,808. This is Commute Tahoe's data that they get, and that's year one only. We're hopeful to expand that from 19 to 25 shuttles in year two, and then onwards from that. As we all know, the biggest challenge is going to be future funding of this operation. It's Caesars Entertainment, as an example, puts part of the funding together for this, and then Enterprise provides the vans, and then our state of Nevada funds make up the difference. Those state of Nevada funds we estimate will last 3 years. It's about $135,000 a year of their funds, of the state of Nevada funds, plus Caesar's contribution to run this program. Obviously, we want this program to last more than 3 years, because these are folks that are coming from Carson, Dayton, and points even east of there, and coming up to Lake Tahoe, because it is much more affordable housing down in that area. There are also some benefits to living down there that we all know: more wide open spaces, larger houses, things like that. But certainly we get a lot of our workforce from there. So we are here as a business entity to work with these wonderful public partners to try and get to our goal. As the treasurer of the SSTMA, I know that our biggest challenge is always going to be funding, future funding. So the TMA is looking at the potential of an improvement district formation in the next 2 to 3 years to really have more business skin in the game for this, so we can get more matching funds, so that we can provide businesses share of this cost, and allow this to be a much more sustainable model for the future. Because the last thing I'll say is, as treasurer of an organization where you're always worried about funding, it's not a great place to be. You want to have sustainable funding every single year that you can say, okay, we can grow this funding, we can grow the pool, we can have, Jim knows this, I'd love to have buses till midnight 7 days a week. And the more we can do this public-private partnership with ride counting towards matching funds, all that, that's what we're all looking for. So, something like that.
Cool. Thank you so much. So there's obviously a lot happening, a lot of different programs and a lot of different funding sources that you guys have to like go after. So I think I mainly start thinking of your questions. The first question I want to ask is about Sugar Pine Village. And I'm wondering how Sugar Pine is a pretty big project, and it's great because it's really close to transit. It's right in the center of town, and I've already been hearing from people that like they're walking from Sugar Pine to Grassroots and places like that. So I guess I'm wondering, can each of you speak to, are you seeing effects, like positive effects on housing, transit, and like workforce yet from Sugar Pine, or so maybe speak to that, and then if not, maybe just talk about how a housing development like that, could relate to the service, what you're trying to provide for your communities.
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
Okay. So I think with Sugar Pine, so I work in the Development Services Department. It's pretty much surrounded by Sugar Pine Village now, next to Cascade Kitchens and Behavioral Health. And so I get to see what happens every day with the residents as they move in. So if you are aware, there's 2 phases that are open so far. So that's 128 units. The 3rd phase is opening in the next few months for another 60 units. So I would say from my perspective, and I walk to Grassroots every day at lunch pretty much, but I see it's really cool because after school you see the school buses coming down, you see lots of kids on their bikes, you see a lot of families walking around to and from the bus. We're passing them pretty much every day. And it's a lot of clients that we work with that we assist through the Security Deposit Assistance Program as well. And so we know each other, and so we're always saying hi on the street. So I think that's a big shift. And what was some of the other questions?
Are you seeing an impact on housing at all? Like, are you seeing other housing be freed up?
Yes. So one of the things that City Council directed us to do was to submit quarterly housing reports to City Council. And so we were looking at the overall wait list of every affordable housing property in the city and looking at if those affordable housing wait lists are actually declining over time. And so we can actually see, I think we started 2 or 3 years ago, right before the first phase of Sugar Pine Village opened. And within that time, we've seen the original amount of people on the wait list for all properties was around 1,400. And now it's just to about 600 or 700. So we are seeing it drop drastically, which is a great sign for our community. We know that the need is still there, and there's a lot of people who can't even qualify to get into Sugar Pine for a variety of reasons. But I think all of that is indicating that we are making an impact, and some of the folks that live in a lot of these market rate units are actually freeing up as well in our community. So those are some of the units, because when you develop affordable housing, the thing we like to talk about is a lot of the people already live here. So we also know that the majority of people on the wait list for Sugar Pine Village all live within South Lake Tahoe or work here. And so when we think about where they're moving from, oftentimes they're in overcrowded conditions, or they're in substandard housing, or they're just in larger units doubled up with another family. And so as these units open up, they're able to move in, and that's freeing up that housing for someone else that is able to afford that. And so in multiple ways, Sugar Pine Village, it's creating more affordable housing, but it's also looking at the remaining housing stock as well.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just real quickly chime in on the one thing you said, that it's freeing up housing, because a lot of our employees can't qualify for it, especially the first phase. I think we're hopeful in maybe phase 2 or 3 or a future one, but we definitely are seeing it in the freeing up of market rate housing for our team members.
Yeah, I think I can't attribute to an increase in ridership directly to Sugar Pine Village. I will say that the stop level data in that area, including our mobility hub, has increased significantly. Our ridership in the system is up 27% over last year. It could just simply be economic reasons that we're seeing nowadays. But I would say, like others in this room that commute by bike to work every day, who shall remain nameless, I ride by that site pretty much every morning, and I am looking at a pretty good activity at our bus stops, at our Southwide Transit Center, and in and around the housing site in itself. So I would say it's positive, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, I would like to go to audience questions. I will just note that we're recording, just so people know. Let's see, Frank, go ahead.
I'll stick with Frank Erdeman in advance. We need to introduce ourselves. Quick question for you, Jessica, and it's that transportation Sugar Pine connection, and it's seeing if there's an update on the additional 2 trips a day from South Lake to Sacramento.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I mentioned, we received the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Grant. We call it ASIC. Lots of acronyms. But that grant funded, so we worked in the second phase of Sugar Pine. It was our transportation implementation partner was El Dorado Transit for Capital Corridor. So that was increasing the buses to 2 trips a day from the Sacramento to Lake Tahoe that Jim was mentioning earlier. I've taken that a bunch of times. I'm sure some of you have taken that as well. So it's really purchasing additional 2 buses and then increasing the trips to a second time a day. We're currently working on implementation of that. So the city is working on negotiating the contract with El Dorado Transit and Capital Corridor JPA to ensure that that gets operated we have to have that running in the next 2 years.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Jean?
Yeah, hi, Gene Diaz, St. Joseph Community Land Trust. We're a general partner in Sugar Pine Village, and kudos to the city, TRPA, to the state of California for helping make that project happen. The largest residential project in the basin, 6-month entitlement process. It was pretty amazing. And you hear how great that project is, so kudos. Also, we do affordable moderate income ownership housing. And the city has been very important in helping us with that by providing the land to help us build these units. We're just launching a new program, the Tahoe Affordable Home Ownership Enabling Program, where we will shift to purchasing existing affordable units and putting them into the community land trust portfolio to make them permanently affordable instead of being demolished and turned into new mansions. So there's going to be more about that program that I'll be announcing very soon. So hopefully you guys will be interested, and if you contact me to get more information to see how you can help. But kudos.
I agree.
Any other questions? Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about the SSTMA and the possible formation of a new improvement district. If you could just elaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in the infant steps of it right now. We have to gain data from City of Salt Lake Tahoe on sales tax data, and then we use a third-party company called Civitas, which is known throughout the TID industry, to understand the best way to go about creating an environment that allows for assessments of businesses, but you have to provide a specific benefit to those businesses at the same time. We know the benefit to most of our businesses is that our employees use this as much as our visitors use this. As a matter of fact, I believe it's 40 to 45% of the ridership right now is employee-based ridership. So we would like to obviously see our visitors use it to visit these businesses that we potentially are going to have as part of the district itself. But it would be throughout the City of South Lake Tahoe limits. It's usually based on sales tax gross receipts data, where you set parameters. So obviously your smaller operators, those pain points are fairly significant if you get too high on any kind of assessment. So we would do a minimal there, and then some of your larger operators, would be willing to share more of a burden hypothetically. So we have to go through all those phases still. I know the North Shore, Placer County, there are TIDs already in place. that accomplish this. So we'll certainly not want to reinvent the wheel as we go through this process, learn from some of the successes of those organizations.
Great, and can you speak again, and I think you spoke to it a little bit earlier, but just the intent of then transitioning those funds to specific purposes? Sounds like expanding transit service. Are there specific goals you're trying to hit with that?
Correct, yeah, it's well, obviously the goal is to get more people out of cars, right? So, less vehicle miles traveled, but really it's to make a sustainable lake link business model that connects to the major transit through the Highway 50 hubs. It's making sure the service, again, we're restricted on those funds to just the parameters of the city of South Lake Tahoe, because that's where the funds come from. So we have to be careful about that. We'd love to expand all the way through Myers and all the way out, but we're restricted by who contributes. So you gotta be careful. But we wanna be more frequent service, less wait times, something where it becomes so reliable that people don't think a second about using Lake Link over getting into their own car, because they know that similar to an Uber, you're gonna get it, it's gonna show up within that acceptable period of time. So ultimately, that's what it's going to come down to. And we'd like to, from the tourist community, get our visitors to stay out of their vehicles. They come into the basin, they park once, and then they keep their vehicle parked. That means getting out to Emerald Bay. Again, Emerald Bay is a challenge because it's outside of the TID zone, so we would have to figure that out. But Emerald Bay is one of the most visited areas. So to get from this core down Highway 50, one transfer to a shuttle up to Emerald Bay, and then you get access, keeping all those visitors out of the car. That's absolutely one of our TID goals.
Yeah, and if first I want to applaud Jerry and SSTMA for taking this approach, right? I mean, in TTD's world, our transit program is roughly about $12.5 million annually. Of that funding, less than 2% is local dollars. We are highly dependent on federal and state funds. Those funds are always subject to the current administration changes. You can't plan and program based on cobbling together a series of state, federal transit funds. If you have a sustainable local contribution that can be used directly for operations or to leverage the state and federal funds and make those funds go farther, that is the way to grow this system. And so we applaud SSTMA for taking that approach on the South Shore.
I'm J.D. Klippenstein with the Reno Housing Authority. We develop obviously down in the Truckee Meadows, and I still have plenty of angry neighbors about parking and transit-oriented development, density, and I would imagine that is maybe even on a heightened level when you're doing that up here. So I'm wondering what lessons you've learned of how you have community conversations around density and land use, in addition to all the other, like the goals and the zoning regulations that you have up here.
It's a great question. Everyone loves density. I would say that, I think Karen should chime in on this a little bit. So I would say that South Shore is very different than the rest of Lake Tahoe. So with Sugar Pine Village, we had a lot of community engagement. There was not a lot of pushback on the project at all, pretty much whatsoever. I think people welcomed it because it was sorely needed. So the city didn't have a housing division since the dissolution of redevelopment in 2012, pretty much. And so we started the housing division again in 2020, which is a housing manager. So in that time, we've had a lot of programs brought back because we don't have a housing authority. And so I think people really wanted another project because they saw the need growing really drastically within the city. And so it was great. And a lot of people were like, this project's never gonna happen. So it was just a pipe dream. It's happened. And I think with 3900, our new project that we're working on, that project, so the city actually did participatory budgeting a few times for projects. They had a few extra $1 million in which citizens, like any residents, could vote on which projects they wanted to fund. One of those projects was $1 million for the 3900 project. And so that one actually was decided to win. So I think that our community is pretty welcome to it. I think these projects are both on Highway 50, pretty much, like on major corridors. So it has a different take. I would say the interesting gets more conversation as you go further into the neighborhoods and increase height and density. That's where some of the conversations can get a little spicier, or we have more conversations. But I think one of the strategies that we've taken since I've been at the city is doing significant amounts of engagement. So I have like community housing office hours, and it's at different local businesses once a quarter, where people can just show up if they want help with an application or they want to learn more about housing financing, which is exciting. They can come do that. So like that, and then we regularly go to other events too. So if housing does come up, then we can be like, hey, let's talk about what the issue is here. And so I think having those open and honest conversations and just sharing like what the facts are that we're seeing, and then hearing what the community hearing is a great way to have some of those conversations as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can just add a little bit to that. Yeah, I think that increasing the engagement is really the key. Like we actually, with the help of Jessica at the city and El Dorado County and Placer County, we applied for the state grant, a REAP grant, which allowed us to do this cultivating community project, which you've probably heard of, and this handout that's on the table is part of that. But a big part of that is just really like increasing the engagement and bringing more groups into our advisory body, and we have stipends to help them participate and stuff like that. And I think it's just been really great to have those folks more engaged, because when we talk to them about density, they're just like, oh yeah, we need more density. You know, like it's not the same conversation at all as you're having with, other neighbors who have maybe been, who aren't working 3 jobs or whatever. So I would say, yeah, just bringing in more folks to the conversation has been really useful. And then we did also do some other webinars. We did a webinar that was very well received several years ago, and Opticos was like a consultant that did it, and they just showed all these different examples of density, and like there's some, like they would be like, hey, here's a 2-unit apartment building with apartments above a restaurant, and guess what, this is 50 units an acre because it's on a really small parcel, and like multiple examples like that, so people could understand like, okay, this is what we're talking about. So I thought that was really useful. Yeah.
Thankfully, I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah. Let's see, I have another question related to commuting, just to kind of go back to this handout that's on your table, this housing needs assessment that we did. Actually, BAE was the consultant that did the study, but one of the big things that this shows is obviously that we have a lot of people commuting into the basin, and I'm just wondering, Jim, actually, like you guys have, and Jerry, you talked a lot about people commuting from pretty far. And Jim, you mentioned some of the transit that we have for that. Could you talk about the trade-offs? Like, what is your funding structure for funding transit for people coming into the basin? And does that like take away from other, like how does that all work?
It does. It compromises. So as I mentioned earlier, we rely mostly on federal and state funding. State funding is mostly California and limited to pretty much the California side of the lake. With regard to our regional connectivity to the Carson Valley, we utilize what's known as FTA Administration 5311 funds, which are rural Nevada funds. They're apportioned to the state of Nevada for rural MPOs. And because there's really no local contribution to that program, we take California dollars for the match for that grant. Okay, it's about a 5% match. So for every $1 million, 5% you have to bring in from California to match that grant. My point being is that once you get into the Tahoe Basin, we are what's known as a large urbanized area, and we're under a different set of rules with regard to funding. So you have this rural component as soon as you go over the hill, and you have this urban component as soon as you get in the basin, and you can't mix the funds. I can't use the rural funds in the basin, I can't use the urban funds outside the basin. So it's a very delicate balance on how you grow and increase transit to the Carson Valley. our route, it typically goes over Kingsbury Grade, it goes into Minden Gardnerville, and then it connects to Carson City. It's an interline system, so it's one bus. So think about that. Leaving South Shore, one bus, Minden, Gardnerville, Carson City, back, up over the hill, and back. That's not a very efficient way of doing transit. And it's not a great incentive for folks that work in the basin to wait every 4 hours for a bus to show up, right? So we're trying to figure out how we can put the pieces of the puzzle together, funding-wise, and create essentially a Kingsbury route, so up and down, and then connector systems from there with our partnering agencies like Campo in Carson City and Douglas County in the Valley, so that we can have sort of a networking system down there. We're also looking at trying to, and this is where I think we might make some success in the near future, is bringing back the Highway 50 route from Carson City up over Spooner Summit to State Line. That route generated a lot of ridership for us when we did it back in the day. It was terminated because the Tahoe Basin was designated an urban UZA. So the funding we were utilizing for that route couldn't be utilized anymore. We had to terminate that route. We're hoping we can get back and put a combination of funding together. But the easiest way for us to increase commuter ridership by fixed route from the valleys into Tahoe and vice versa is by local funding. It's local funding. It's the jurisdictions that have to recognize that this is a need in their community and contribute to leverage those other funds we're using. That's the dilemma we're facing right now. I mean, I think there's not many municipalities out there right now in today's world that are really flush with cash and flush with budget.
And to chime in, the success of Commute Tahoe that we've seen already in the short period of time it's been in existence shows that Highway 50, and I'm certain the Kingsbury route, will be well received and well utilized. It's a no-brainer. The funding is absolutely the issue. So, I think we would be glad to give up our Commute Tahoe for some more ridership on that. And I told you that funding is going to run out in a couple of years.
Well, and my operations, transit operations on the South Shore is just under 100 employees. 66%, roughly 2/3 to 1/3. 2/3 live in the basin, 1/3 live out of the basin. That out of the basin number is growing every year. We're just not able to keep our employees living here. And that's hurting us, right? That's why we're looking at workforce housing on our maintenance and operations facility. That's why we're looking at maybe deadheading a bus that we keep in the valley for an operator to literally get in it in the morning and drive all those other operators up the hill, right? Like we're trying to figure out these alternatives. Under federal funding, there's no payment for that bus. It's deadhead. It's not revenue hours. And so, there's these intricacies with the federal dollars. That's why I said, if you have local dollars, it's much more flexible, much easier to use, much easier to program. But yeah, we're hurting just like any other business with employees as well.
The transit that is available down to the valley, do you know what percentage roughly are employees or day visitors?
So no, we don't keep that kind of survey. We could do it, we don't. I will say that the Kingsbury route up and down is fairly small ridership. The bulk of the ridership is Minden, Gardnerville, Carson City, and back. That zone, that 395 zone, if you will, carries a lot of riders. Route 19, we've seen probably anywhere from 37 to 40% growth over last year just in that ridership. And I have a feeling that has a lot to do with shopping and commercial facilities on the outskirts of Carson City, and then medical and other facilities in the Minden Gardnerville area. Yeah.
So you suspect it's day trippers?
Yes.
Fueling that.
Yeah.
So, and then to tie back to that, what I think was the last needs assessment that the city did with partnership with TPC, it was just pre-COVID. I remember we launched that report right as the shutdowns were happening. one of the things that stood out to me in that report was, and I can't remember what the exact number was, but it was a very high percentage of employees that have to commute more than X time, which the commute from the Valley to here was. After 12 months, it's a huge percentage of them that just end up finding a local job.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
was curious how big a concern that is for everybody on the panel, that we're basically building an infrastructure to shuttle employees to and from that might be actually encouraging local employment churn.
Yeah. I mean, in our operation, we are constantly hiring. I mean, our hiring is just constant, full-time. In back of our buses, it's literally advertised, come work for us, dial this number. I can't say whether or not our employees would leave for a local job as a replacement. I can say this: fixed route transit requires a commercial driver's license to be an operator. And we invest a significant amount of money into training employees, onboarding employees to get their commercial driver's license. And then what we see is that commercial driver's license opens up better economic opportunity for that employee, and they typically leave and go elsewhere. So for us, we're looking at strategies of how can we train and get CDLs and maintain employees within the basin, like as a partnership with TART, Washoe County, and others. How can we come together for a training system and a licensing system up here that reduces a lot of costs for us all, right? That's our biggest dilemma with operators. I don't think it's so much of a work environment as it is that CDL opens up a world of opportunities beyond driving a bus. Yeah.
Frank?
Jim, I think, and this is something we can talk about offline as well, I think under the soon-to-be-released approach of workforce bells, so traditional college-focused money that will be available for shorter-term training starting July 1st, depending on the state's, each state's rollout. I think there might be an opportunity to help find a way to fund that training at an individual participant level. So you and I should talk a little bit about that. But I'm also wondering if you and Jerry could talk a little bit about how some of the integration between SSTMA and TTD with LakeLink, even with the van program, the Tahoe van program, how that better integration and collaboration between the entities is allowing you to increase your data reporting, which will hopefully, as if I remember correctly from a brief stint there, will help increase the amount of funding that can actually be drawn even from federal sources for transit funding.
Yeah, it's funny, I'll chime in quickly and then Jim will really tell you what the expert thinks. Is that we were talking right before this about federal funding, and the fact is, Jim told me, is that unfortunately those federal funding dollars are pennies on the dollar. I think there was something about a $50,000 number that we'll probably talk about in a second here. But we are absolutely looking at good hard data that both the TMA can get through LakeLink program that could assist him with ridership, as well as Commute Tahoe, which I think is a much more durable number right now. LakeLink, we're making sure that those numbers are good because it's much more fluid with the number of buses or vans out there and all whatnot. But it's only one small piece of the financing puzzle, I think, is what I heard.
Yeah, the federal apportionments are really based, at least in our realm, based on really two key items: population, and then ridership. How many riders are you taking each year? And as you increase your ridership, theoretically, you should get an increase in federal apportionment. But that increase isn't really one-to-one, right? If we generated another 100,000 riders a year, you would not see $100,000. You would not see $1 million. You would see maybe $50,000, maybe $40,000. But I will say that the way the Federal Transit Administration works is that's in arrears. Right now, our operating dollars are based on apportionments from the Federal Transit Administration in fiscal year 22, based on the ridership in fiscal year 2022. So by adding Lake Link, by adding an evening service, by increasing our frequency, by generating increased ridership, we will not see an apportionment increase until probably 28 or 29, right? So you have to work through that system. So I hope that answered, right?
So some regionally supported advocacy at the federal legislative level would probably be beneficial at some point to make changes to maybe accelerate the process.
Yeah.
Not easy.
It's not easy, and as I mentioned before, trying to cobble together federal funds every year is not the best way to run a business. So I don't know about legislation on that behalf. What I would love to see is some sort of relaxation of the commercial driver's license. I think that would open up a world of opportunity for employment. I think it would drive down costs of an operating system. I would love to see some sort of nationwide effort in that strategy.
Get on.
Yeah, thanks, Frank.
Cool. Well, we're getting to the end of the time. Thank you, everyone, for these questions. And I really love how we're starting to unearth strategies that take regional or state synergies or synergies between all the different partners here. So, do any of you have any final things that you just want to say that have come to mind through the conversation? Optional, because we didn't plan that in advance, but just want to give you one more chance to say anything.
No, I think something that Jim and Jerry both alluded to is transportation and housing are very interconnected, so they rely on each other a lot. And so does all the funding, and it's very similar in the way that we try to have local leverage, like local dollars that are here to leverage outside funding. And it's very hard, like something that Jim was talking about, and I was getting pain in my chest thinking about how you have to layer financing for some of these projects. It's for Sugar Pine, there's 7 different funding sources. You have to align the timelines of each one of those funding sources and look at all the requirements, and that takes a lot of time. It increases the costs. It does all these things. So if we think about the funding for transportation and housing, it's that these systems are very complex, and it's not a perfect system that any of us created, but that's what we're here with now.
I think that's great. I would add that, we talk about incentives from local jurisdictions, in this case, the millions of dollars the city put up or land that we might be putting up. I don't think what's quantified is the amount of time that we're putting into those efforts. That largely goes not charged to any particular account, right? It just goes into your general administration, and in many of our cases, that general administration is a very low budget number. So I think there's a lot of work and effort that goes on behind the scenes that I don't necessarily know the public knows about, right? There's a lot of time, and we should be talking about that a little bit more.
And then last for me, on a real positive note, the resort I oversee is here it's called Forest Suites Resort. It's here in the core. And I would say that 80% of our visitors, because of our location, because we're walkable to basically everything you need, that our guests actually say they are refreshed, that they park their car, our average length of stay is 2-point-something days, and they don't get in their car the entire time of their visit. Now, if they're going to Emerald Bay, I believe that they're going to get into their car because we haven't developed those systems yet. But there is positive momentum for Californians to stay out of our cars, and we're hearing it from our visitors. So we want that. So the more we can do from from our employees as well, but the more we can do these connected transit modes, especially the airport as well, getting that shuttle, get more of our visitors up here. Don't rent a car. We have the best transportation system in the basin that connects, frequent, free, and fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I leave you with, that it's real positive.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.
Just a reminder, we have about 15 minutes until the next session.
15 minutes.
Excellent job, Jessica.
Yeah, that was great, you guys.
Nice work, you guys.
So I'm
new to the area.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm Brad.
I've been past the market together in Kansas. I don't know, but I have first off great with
Which is also setting that up here. Yeah, I put some more things on the table. Got to talk to people too who came by, which is awesome. Just want to say great job.
So it's all transit operations, right? So the way we operate
their requirement is for
See, here's the thing. This is what I'm saying. Our CFO, that's what I mean. Our CFO and our finance department are